Hello and welcome to another edition of the Father and Son Pastime podcast. I'm Patrick.
I'm Kevin. How are you?
That's my dad. Dad, we're late June right now, but
Late June.
I'm giddy because Carlos Santana just got traded. And I knew he was going to get traded. I've done a lot of research on all these potential trade targets of the summer of 2022. The trade deadline, Dad, isn't until August 2nd this year.
5 weeks away.
I took off for it the whole day.
So did I.
He's retired now. Please congratulate him. We haven't covered that in a past podcast. But, Dad, I wanted to dive into a little bit of not just the buyers and sellers, but specifically the sellers this episode. What do they got to sell? Mm-hmm. Will they sell it? Because there's a lot of chips like the classic Whit Merrifield. Hey, is he finally going to get traded? He's under team control for a couple more years. So we're going to look at the easy picks, the people that are under in their contract year, free agent at year's end. But also, who else might get dealt? Because it's inevitable that some of those 1.5-year guys, 2.5-year guys do get dealt at the deadline. Frankie Montas, for example.
He's going to draw a lot.
Right.
He might draw 4 players.
Right.
But I think this is going to be one of the most active trade deadlines, even more so than last year. I think this year, now that there's another playoff spot for the ready, I think people are like, hey, I'm close. And a lot of times, like Nationals last year, waited to almost a week before the deadline to say, we're sellers. So I think this may happen with a lot of teams that are already around 500 now. The next few weeks can determine how they're going to enter the fray.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Some of the sellers we'll talk about are very easy, like the Reds or the Cubs.
Maybe you say the Cubs.
They 100% they are.
I know. They might be. My prediction is the Cubs will trade the most players of any team in baseball.
Well, let's start with them then, Dad.
Okay.
Before we begin, I want to say that we're going to go over it. We're just being very excited here in the beginning, saying some names. We'll be a little organized. We're going to go team by team and really look at any true potential trade candidate, not like sellers aren't going to be trading their prospect, like O'Neal Cruz of the Pirates is not a person we'll talk about.
94 miles an hour from short to first.
Right, but the people that are the veterans that are possible trade chips, that's really what we're going to cover. Most of the names we're going to say today aren't going to be traded, probably a half, maybe a third, we'll see. I got a lot of names. But before we really dive into that, Dad, we just talked about the Pirates. I want to give a shout out to the Pirates, the Diamondbacks, and the Orioles. I know I've never shouted out the Orioles on this podcast, but they have been decent this year.
Almost 500.
All 3 of them are having the best years in a while. They are obviously going to be sellers, but they're not going to sell that much because they're really building for the future.
If they kept John Means healthy, they may be 500.
Right.
Because right now their pitching is their weak link.
So these 3 teams are having, better. They're exceeding expectations. I think that's probably the best way to say that. They're not having great seasons by any measure, but by their standards, yes. Most of them, obviously not the Orioles, but most of them are not the worst in their divisions. You can make an easy argument the Orioles are in either of the West or the Central. They're not 5th. So I just want to shout them out because sometimes when we talk about the sellers, they're these basement teams. They're tanking. All 3 of these teams, in my opinion, are trying. They're winning series
against good teams.
So I just really wanted to say, if you are a Pirates, Orioles, or Diamondbacks fan, I think we start to see you guys as a buyer. Maybe even as early as next year's trade deadline. Mm-hmm. But I'm excited to one day not talk about you as a seller on this podcast. So I just wanted to say that before we start.
I was going to say those same items. The team that I'm most impressed with is the Orioles, with a couple of young players coming in and gaining confidence. Their outfield is one of the best outfields in the major leagues. Who thought that they would do as well as they did? And even Mancini's not having a great year, but even with that, they're still doing well. So
pesky O's.
Yeah, they're more than pesky. But yeah, they're winning some games that you're like, what? And good for them. So if they put it all together, next year might be pretty good with DL Hall, Rodriguez, all those folks coming back. John Means, their starting rotation is not bad. Mm-hmm. So yeah,
sky's the limit. But let's talk about not the limit. Let's talk about the opposite of that. Let's talk about the Chicago Cubs. We said that we were going to talk about them. He's a Cubs fan, lifelong Chicago native. Dad, you kind of hinted at that they could have the most names, at least for sale, if not traded. This trade deadline season. Again, we're not going to get predictions this episode. Just list me a few names, or all the names, that the Cubs may offer and put out there.
Well, Wilson Contreras might be traded within the next 2 weeks. There is, scuttlebutt that you hear that I think it might come down to the Astros and Yankees, a bidding war. Both have a lot of talent to offer. Wilson might get 3, maybe 4 players. He right now is the best offensive catcher in baseball. I think he'll be the star that will get the most return. And then, not in any particular order, David Robertson will be traded. Red Sox are scouting the heck out of him. Yankees might want him back to their club. And then in the bullpen, there's others that they can go. Givens and a couple other folks that they have are right-handed relievers. So just out of the bullpen may come 3 players. Contreras, Kyle Hendricks is out there. Apparently he's doing that. And the latest one is Ian Happ. And he may... Toronto is looking for him, and for some reason, the Yankees are looking for him as well, just to give him another bat. So right now, you're talking 8 players that are involved actively in trade talks right now.
Mm-hmm. I just want to remind my co-anchor about this is not a prediction podcast. That will come later,
okay,
where we'll explore some really good fits for these people. But just to add on to his list, obviously, Contreras and D-Rob are the 2 big names, talents-wise, big returns. Wade Miley, if he can get healthy, I think could draw a player. Ian Happ could have a really big return because of his 1.5 years left. I do think he's traded.
And switch hitter?
I don't think Marcus Stroman gets traded because of his contract and the length of it, but I wouldn't be surprised to hear his name. Some of the bullpen guys you mentioned, Dad, like Michael Gibbons, Rowan Wick, Chris Martin, and Daniel Norris. I don't think there's anything to Daniel Norris. It's a more cuttable guy at this point. Yeah. Chris Martin, decent enough to get traded. Who doesn't need bullpen?
He had a good year with the Braves last year.
Givens and Wick, I think if the Cubs could get rid of Givens, he's making $3.5 million for a reliever. That is on a bad team. I would say not cut him, but get rid of him. Jonathan VR, I think, again, it's not a part of
He got waived.
He got waived officially with 1.5 years left. Wow.
Gone.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thanks for being my Cub expert. And I know he's not having the year that I thought he was, but Andrelton Simmons is still a Gold Glove shortstop and could go to a utility club as a backup fielder to move their shortstop to a DH. I mean, again, we're not going to talk predictions just yet, but who doesn't need that?
And you're talking, that's 10 names, and then, the Cubs AAA team is okay, but they're going to have to, fill in those 10 players, and their second half of the year in Chicago is not going to be pretty.
Yeah.
I think they may lose 100 games.
I wrote 5 names down as the future is. It's Seiya Suzuki, Nick Madrigal, Nico Horner, PCA, and Brennan Davis. I think those 5 people, even Brennan Davis is more questionable at this point, but those 4 players will be, I think, long-term Cubs, and the only people at least not on the trade block. Like Horner being on the trade block doesn't make sense.
Well, I think Nick may go in the offseason because they're going to push
Horner or Madrigal?
Madrigal.
Okay, well.
I think he's going to go over, and then they're going to keep Nico Horner at second base, and apparently they're going to get one of the big 4 shortstops that are in that, and apparently this offseason is when the Cubs are going to make a splash.
They said that last offseason, and they made some splashes. So,
yeah.
Future is in question because my 5 locks, he just said not so sure about 2 of them. I think David Ross should get fired, but this is not a Cubs podcast. This is just trade deadline. Dad, anything more about the Cubs before we move on to the Reds?
No, I just think that Jed Hoyer is on record of saying that, we need to build for the future. It's not happening this year. So I think there's some talented players in our minor leagues. PCA is one of them. But
that's Pete Crow Armstrong for those at home.
Yes. And I think they're looking at getting back in the thick of things 2024. But, they have some talent down there. It's just they need some more help. But trading away 10 players should get some nice players in return.
Worked out for the Nationals. I think we'll start to see that in a couple years. But so I'm very curious to see where the Cubs do. I want to say out of all the possible sellers, they currently have the highest payroll at $148 million for the year. So that is something to really keep in mind. If you know you're out of it, shed as much payroll as possible. I want to say we talked about 40 or so million just in those players. Jason Haywood is a big part of that, and obviously I don't think they'll trade him. But they really need, if you're looking at the finances only, you got to cut $48 million in trades. And that's going to be tough. But I think for a team to finish at 100 losses, but to spend $100 million, it's asinine. So I'm really curious just to see how much the Cubs do shed by August 2nd.
Yeah, I think Jason is the big part of that. I think it's 18 mil for him. From what I
24 and a half.
24 and a half. But from what I understand, David Ross loves him. He thinks he's a great example for the young players. He'll probably be cut in the offseason and offer him maybe a job on the coaching staff.
He's still young, but you're right. He's kind of past his prime.
He's done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of being done, let's move on. Let's be done with the Cubs and move on to the Reds. My note here, Dad, is coming after talking about the Cubs. The Reds are going to be, I think, fairly quiet. I'd love to hear your opinion. I know the two big names on the Reds, Luis Castillo and Tyler Mahle, I say don't get traded. I know that's going to be a hot take. Both have multiple years still left on their contracts, either through arbitration or whatever it might be. I don't know if the Reds need to get rid of them. The only way I see Castillo and Mahle getting moved is in a package for Mike Moustakas. The reason I bring up Mike is because he makes $16 million a year, and much like Jason Haywood, he's not worth what he gets paid. If that doesn't happen, they really would have to be overwhelmed with an offer to get Castillo or Mahle, and we know that the Dodgers, and if the Mets are still, in hurting, I can see those two teams making a push. But I don't know. I can see the Reds aren't contract guys. They're not going to feel the need to push them June 30th. They're going to wait, and if they don't get the offer, hey, I'll listen at the winter meetings. Hey, I'll listen next trade deadline.
I disagree. I think both will go.
Okay.
And the reason why, pitching is such a high commodity right now, and there's people that desperately need starting pitching. They'll ante up something for that. The Mets and Cardinals are, looking for that. But I think both will go, and then the Reds will build for the future as well. But I think both are too hot not to get the offers they want.
They'll get offers. I say they don't get traded. He says he will. We'll sound off in the comments what you think. Maybe one and not both. Who knows?
Yeah.
However, the guy I really want to talk to about the Reds, Dad, is having a breakout year at the league minimum. Brandon Drury. Double-digit home runs already. Can play a little utility infield. Hey, he could probably play outfield if you wanted to, or DH. Really good season. Finally getting his stroke right. Making $700K a year. What a dream trade bait for someone who needs either a starting second baseman because Ozzie Albies goes down, or your third baseman goes down, and you need to put someone in that role.
Plenty of teams need depth.
They'll get the most calls.
Yeah. It's funny when you go through the people that have had injuries, they're going to try to find, Swiss Army knife to have somebody play multiple positions so they can plug in there because the stars are dropping like flies. And so they need somebody to play a little outfield, a little infield, a nice, left-handed bat. That's why I think the trade deadline is going to be so fun because people are looking for pieces just to get them to the promised land and get to the playoffs. Yeah. So, yes.
And then I think he's a free agent in the offseason. So one or two pieces for him tops because, it's not a big name, but he's having a great season and a great time to get hot. I hope you get paid in the offseason. Three other names that I think aren't big names, and I think one of these guys does not get traded. Hunter Strickland is a relief pitcher for them, has enough years of experience, not having a great season, but that could be, you could break down the numbers and see if it's just Reds. Hold on.
Bless you.
Sorry about that. So Hunter Strickland, he's on the DL right now, so the IL right now. Tyler McQuinn, he's like a DH outfielder, plays a little first base occasionally. And everyone's favorite Fight Club member, Tommy Pham. And that's the reason I don't think he gets traded. He also has a year and a half of team control left. Dad, any others that I missed?
No, I think the Reds have, they started their fire sale in the winter. I think they continue to have that. But yeah, I think they'll be active as well. Who finishes last between Cubs and Reds? That's a good bet.
It does depend, I think, I think we're kind of in alignment that the Cubs trade any good offer.
Yeah.
And Stroman's not having a good year to keep the Cubs afloat.
Yeah.
And if Reds keep Castillo and Molly, I think the Reds jump the Cubs. But if they trade their two top starters, they're also done.
Yeah, and I think the Cubs wouldn't be that embarrassed to be in last place, because that guarantees a first 5 draft choice next year, and that's how you build your team. So yeah, I think that, you can see the blueprint the Cubs are going with. So I did it before in 2012, 13, 14, and they came to fruition in 16. So they got the blueprint. They're just going to follow it.
We shall see what happens in the Central between the battles of the basement between those two teams.
Yeah.
One team that will not be 5th place come October is the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Yeah.
They still will sell some pieces. A very low payroll this year, $70 million. They have so much talent. Mr. Sawinski is killing it right now. We got O'Neal Cruz. They have a lot of promise really all over the field. So I hope baseball in Pittsburgh comes back, because
Don't forget their third baseman.
you have a great ballpark. Yes, kid Brian Hayes.
Yeah.
I'm still so pro. I keep forgetting he's young and he's still a prospect.
Yeah.
Dad, they still have pieces though. I think one of the people I want to talk to first is their biggest trade, Chip. Even though he has multiple years of team control left, we hear this every winter. We hear this every trade deadline. Does Brian Reynolds get traded? And this is the season I think he gets traded.
Yeah, I think somebody will make an offer they can't refuse.
Yes.
So I think, again, a nice athletic piece that can cover ground and everything else. He always gets on base, has some speed. Great addition for a team that's looking for a little energy and all that stuff. So yeah, I mean, if someone can come up with 3 key players for him, I think I think that's going to go. And I think the Pirates have a young right-handed pitcher named David Bednar that apparently is a hot commodity.
Yes, I remember that's my law firm at Bednar and Stratton. I don't want them to get broken up. Stratton's not having a great year, so I don't think he'll get that much interest, which really helps. Bednar's having a great year. Bednar's having an all-star level year where there's other people on that team that will get nominated for an all-star, but he honestly deserves some looks. 4.5 years of team control left because he's won. I mean, who doesn't want that?
Yeah.
That's someone that honestly any team would be interested in if you have a shot at making the playoffs the next 4 years. If you have any shot, I kind of need an 8th inning guy, 9th inning guy.
And, being in mid-20s, that's when you want to get starting pitching, so they know that you have that endurance and everything else. But apparently his name has been bandied about as well. Again, high's better.
Yes. I don't think they get rid of both Bednar and Reynolds. I think that'd be weird if they have to shape their team around somebody.
They're building.
And I think as a good but not great, he's not an Aroldis Chapman, he's not a Josh Hader, he's not going to get a great return like Reynolds will. And I think Bednar, Stratton, Will Crow can be their 7th, 8th, 9th guys for the next 2 years at least. So I hope they don't trade any bullpen. I actually don't have any of those guys being traded.
Okay.
Brian Reynolds, I do. Another great chip is Jose Quintana. Cub, White Sox, now a Pirate.
And an Angel.
Great ERA this year, too.
Yeah, it's funny. A lot of people, I think, are looking at him saying, is this aberration? Is he getting back to where he was with the White Sox? I mean, he's gone from a 5-something ERA to a 3. Maybe he rediscovered himself, but a left-handed starting pitcher, always a great addition to have. So, again, he signed him for 1 year. It wouldn't be a bad trade.
He is a free agent after this year. Would you like to know his price tag that he signed with the Pirates for?
I think it was like less than $1 million.
$2 million.
Oh, $2 million.
So start him doing that well at $2 million. Really simple choice. I think he'll easily get traded.
And he has playoff experience.
Yeah. 3 other names that aren't that sexy or that interesting. I think 2 are almost cuttable. Dan Vogelbach, Jake Marisnick, and Ben Gamel. I know Marisnick is another Cub guy.
So is Vogelbach.
Vogelbach, I think, because he has some pop. I think he gets traded. The other 2 I really don't care about, and I'm not going to follow their stories.
He's a DH through and through.
Vogelbach is a DH for sure. I don't even have him listed anything else but a DH.
He might be the slowest player in MLB.
He reminds me a little of Prince Fielder, but, size-wise.
Yeah.
That's all I had there that was notable in the Pirates. Anything else?
No, I'd concur with what you were saying. So, and then the Pirates are like, hey, let's hang on to the good pieces right now and maybe build this thing. Apparently, their farm system is producing good players, athletic players.
Mm-hmm.
So they're on their way up. So it's always good to see. Great statement in Pittsburgh. I hope the town of Pittsburgh supports them.
Mm-hmm. Last thing I say about them, I think you'll listen on all offers. My co-host seems to think that everyone from Cincinnati's gone, everyone from Chicago's gone, everyone from Pittsburgh's gone. At some point, and this is only 3 of the teams out of maybe 12 to 13 big sellers that we'll see, there's other competition. So I can see there's a lot of relievers that we'll kind of cover.
Yes.
I don't know if Bednar stands out when you can get David Robertson. Like, again, I'm a big fan of Bednar and Stratton, but I just don't know if getting rid of 4 years of team control David Bednar is worth the return. Unless, again, top 10 prospect in your organization, and you have a hole or something like that.
I think teams look for people who have been in playoff situations and they kind of know what it is to be in a pennant race. I think that means a lot in the trade deadline.
Right, and Bednar hasn't. He's been a Pirate his whole life.
Correct.
I think you're a great player, though.
Yeah.
Dad, let's move on to just one of my most hated organizations, but I love your ballpark, the Colorado Rockies. We're moving to the NL West. Dad, because they don't understand how to do money over there, and they signed Chris Bryant to a great contract and let Trevor Story go without trading him, I'm not confident in anything I'm about to say with the Colorado Rockies. They could trade their whole team, or they could trade nobody, and somehow it wouldn't surprise me.
I agree wholeheartedly because last couple of years they have blown the deadline. Trevor Story was shocked that he didn't get traded last year. So I think again the GM situation in Colorado is not good. There's the captain is not at the wheel steering the ship. So I think they really are afloat. They've made some bad choices. I'm surprised they had his record early like they did, but you're right. Who knows what they're going to do? I don't have any confidence either way as well.
I have a few notes because they have some players that I really like on the Rockies. I mean, that's kind of always been my MO with Arenado and Story. Yeah. And now Daniel Bard.
Yes. Yes.
Who, again, has a unique story. If you know him.
Great story.
Like, with the Red Sox to out of baseball to back in baseball. Having a good year, closer, could be if an 8th inning guy, if you already have a closer.
Yeah.
All these guys I'm about to talk about are in their contract year. So, again, they should trade Daniel Bard. They probably won't. Jose Iglesias, their shortstop.
Great shortstop.
Again, was a second baseman for the Red Sox last year. Has that versatility.
Yeah.
Yolis Chasen, I think I said that right. Not having a great year, but again, he's a guy that seems to always be a Rocky, but he can be a starter. He can be a long relief guy. Alex Colon used to be a huge upside guy with Tampa Bay and reduced himself, but there's your 8-9 punch with Bard and Colon. Yeah. And then an I talk about them. If you follow us on Twitter, I talk about Chad Kuhl all the damn time. Just threw a no-hitter is the most underrated trade chip that we're going to talk about today.
Ex-Pirate.
Another ex-Pirate, only making $3 million a year. Just as good, in my opinion, as Martin Perez, who's getting tons of attention down in Texas. Chad Kuhl should get a return. I hope all these guys find new teams by August 3rd.
I agree. And such a fun stadium and a supportive city. I really think that, you're right. But, they're going to get offers. We'll see what they do with them. But, yeah. So, go ahead.
The 3 offensive numbers, because, Iglesias is offense, but not really, no offense. All these guys have a year and a half of team control left. They have immense upside, especially C.J. Cron. But do they get rid of any of them? C.J. Cron, Charlie Blackmon, or Randall Grichuk?
They're all pretty good players.
Cron should be in the home run derby.
Yeah. And you know what? He had punch with that. And the other 2 are good outfielders. I think one might be past his prime a little bit. Charlie might be up mid-30s at least.
Mm-hmm. He's corner to DH. He's not a center fielder anymore.
Yeah. So who knows?
Again, it's the Rockies. Again, they could do smart decisions, but they won't. They could keep Daniel Bard and that would just be stupid because you think he's like
Yeah,
36, 37.
He's not going to get any saves.
He's not going to get better. No offense, Daniel Barr, but like if you're the Rockies, cash in your chips.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And it's a great story because he's gone through about 8 seasons of really struggling to get back.
Mm-hmm. What's tough is the Rockies have $135 million locked up in payroll. A lot of that's Chris Bryant. I mean, like 90% of it's Chris Bryant. If they traded those 5 names that I mentioned earlier, not the bigger former All-Stars, they would only cut about $12 million from that. So Bard, Iglesias, Colom, and Kuhl are not making a whole bunch. The most on there was $5 million.
Yeah.
So
Blackman's got a pretty good contract.
Yeah, but who's going to take $21 million?
I know. Yeah, you mean you gotta pay
so they'll keep
half of it.
They're bad negotiators.
It's the same thing with the Padres. You know, they're trying to get rid of some dead wood, but no one wants to pick up that kind of cash.
Yeah. Rockies will be fun to watch-ish, but also not fun to watch. It's the nature of Colorado.
Yeah.
Dad, you want to take us through the Diamondbacks? You want to mention a few names?
I do. I have a few.
Okay.
David Peralta.
Yes. I love David Peralta.
And, apparently, a nice fill-in outfielder DH, can do some things. A lot of teams are looking for bench, players and everything else. Christian Walker.
Yes.
For that. And then a name that you may be shocked with, Madison Bumgarner.
He's an option. He's on my list.
So those 3 is the 3 that I have, and I'm thinking they need to do something, and if they can have someone take some of Matt Baum's contract, why not? There's rumors out there with him going, to some teams, but again, he's not the pitcher he once was.
No, but he's having a decent year. Certainly better year than the past couple.
Yeah.
I want to talk first about Christian Walker because I'm glad you brought him up. Underrated first baseman. Reminds me a lot of like a Billy Butler. He's batting like 200. 2.5 years of team control left, but as of the recording of this podcast, has 19 home runs. And that's a lot at 2.5 months in the season. On pace for 40, 45 home runs.
Yeah.
If you hit above 30 home runs in today's baseball, people are going to notice you. And Christian Walker, I'd love to see the home run derby. Anyways, $2.5 million a year seems like a really low cost DH to pick up somewhere.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know how good his first baseman skills are. He's no Paul Goldschmidt.
A lot of teams would let him go, including the Orioles.
Listen, Jose Bautista's story.
Yeah.
He's finding his stroke now, and that's all that matters.
Yeah.
David Peralta, Dad, makes a lot of sense. He's in his contract year. He reminds me a lot of Eddie Rosario because he's kind of got that left field DH heroics to him.
Yeah.
Peralta, check me if I'm wrong, has led the leagues in triples like for 4 out of the last 10 seasons. So he used to have some speed, and he used to hit in the gaps. He still gets a couple. But Ian Kennedy is another contract year. Not really a closer anymore like he was last year for Texas and Philly, but like a 7th, 8th inning guy.
And there's a lot of teams need that.
Decent year. He'll go possibly his last year. A couple other people that I just want to mention. I don't know. In my opinion, they will not trade their starters. Madison because of his contract. Merrill Kelly and Zach Davies because they have years left. They should listen, just like I said about Pirates bullpen and the Reds starting pitching. I don't think they'll go. One person I think should go, despite his years left on his contract, is Mark Melanson. Same reason for Ian Kennedy. Age. I don't know why they signed him to a 3-year contract. But get what you can get out of your 2
Davies
relievers.
just got hurt.
I know Davies is hurt. I think, you can trade people in the IL. I don't think you should, but you can. More reason for them to keep stock in Merrill Kelly and Mad Bum then because I started going down.
Yeah.
Again, listen to Davies' trade deadline. I think there's... I know pitching's always at a premium.
The Cubs couldn't trade him last year. They tried. They couldn't trade him.
I know pitching's always at a premium, but I think this year next thing is when we add up all the predictions, I have 12 to 15 starters that are out there. There's 12 to 15 contenders.
Mm-hmm.
Not all need starting pitching. Like, there are some, of course, but I don't think the Houston Astros are going to be knocking on the Diamondbacks for Madison Bumgarner or Merrill Kelly.
Yeah.
They have a nice staff. So not all of those 12 are going to need what I would call, especially Merrill Kelly and Madison Bumgarner, frontline starters. Anything else with the Diamondbacks, Dad?
I think that was what I had, the 3 big names, and I think 2 of the 3 will go.
Okay. I I want to move away from the West unless you, for whatever reason, think the Giants, the Dodgers, the Padres will tank.
No.
And I figured the Brewers and the Cardinals weren't worth mentioning.
I agree. I agree.
Same page. Let's move to the East, Dad. We're staying in the National League. We're such an American League podcast, always talking to the Orioles or the Red Sox first. Let's talk Nationals. Nationals have a lot of people, too. I think their best trade chip is Josh Bell.
Yes.
We got to see Josh Bell play, home run day, player of the game, batting .311. People talk about his home run ability, not so much his defense at first base. He's going to get a good return.
He will. And I believe he's a switch hitter.
I believe so. I can check on that.
And I think that makes him even more attractive. And there's a lot of teams.
He's switch hitter.
Yeah, there's other teams that need a first base DH, and he's having a good year. His one of the things I thought was interesting, he's not swinging and missing anymore. He's getting hard contact with what he has. I think he's in the top 3 of the National League in getting contact and not getting the easy out that he once was. So again, I think he's a huge trade chip, and I think he'll go to a team that needs a little offensive punch.
He has a better team WAR right now than Juan Soto. Putting that in perspective, should be an all-star, should be Juan Soto as well. But Josh Bell obviously has protected Soto more in that lineup than Nelson Cruz has, which is obviously the other trade candidate that should draw some interest. He's 41. He's a DH. He's probably in his last year, but he'll get a player. Somebody will trade for Nelson Cruz as a platoon DH. Maybe it's the Rays again. I don't know,
and that's why the Nationals signed him.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
to protect Soto for as long as they could, and then flip him.
You got it.
Dad, there's a few other names on this list that I think are worth exploring. Pretty much their entire infield is going to go. We talked about Josh Bell. Second baseman, Cesar Hernandez. Shortstop, Alcides Escobar. And third baseman, Maikel Franco. None of these guys are making a lot of money. Josh Bell obviously is the exception there. But they're all having decent enough years to get traded.
Yeah.
Especially Cesar Hernandez, who's pretty decent as a second baseman shortstop option.
Kind of utility guy.
Yeah. Franco, not so much. Alcides Escobar would be like a Jose Iglesias, a backup somewhere. But, I mean, that's August 3rd. The entire Nationals infield should look different. That's a little scary. Yeah,
I think there's another team that will have close to a 100-loss season.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah.
They'll have more losses than the Orioles.
Yeah. The Cubs-Nationals series coming up in August should be just a great series.
Yeah, you'll learn some players. You really will.
That's right. To just have numbers on their back, no names.
The Yankees. 2 relievers, one not good, one good, but is worth mentioning. Not good, formerly good, Steve Sheshik. He's in his contract year, just signed for a 1-year deal, $2 million. Someone's going to call. Tanner Rainey is an option here.
Yeah.
So he's their closer, if you don't know the Nats, but he has 3.5 years of team control left. The Nats could easily keep him. They might. They could listen on him. They could, in my wildest dream, package him with a Patrick Corbin for someone that's looking. Corbin just had a really good outing.
Yeah, he did. He did. The game that we saw, he did fairly well.
So if he can have 3-4 of those in July, you package with a Cruz or a Bell or a Rainey, you could move your dead weight of Patrick Corbin and have a lot more money to give Soto an extension and sign some people in the offseason. Crazier things have happened. I know Nats fans probably want him gone, but Corbin could be traded. Unlikely, but could.
Just a little sidebar. I notice in that game and in other games that I've watched, the managers are leaving in the starting pitchers longer than they should. Corbin's a great example. He was really cruising until probably the 6th. Went to the 7th, he had nothing and got lit. And I'm just saying, I think with a lot of pitchers, the managers are having a slower hook get these guys out of the game than they should. Yeah. It's happening to all these teams. I think starters 5-16, that's all they have now. And you got to start looking at the bullpen earlier than normal.
Unless you're Justin Verlander and you're freaking Nolan Ryan. He might be a Cy Young candidate. Like, it's nuts.
I know.
Dad, there's one team left in the National League that I think will sell something, but not much. If you have them, I'd love for you to talk about the Miami Marlins.
You know what?
Do you have anything?
It's funny you mention that. They're kind of like, they're thinking of adding. I read a couple articles that they thought they would add. I had something in one of my notes that they were, trying to get, rid of some relievers and everything. But they're trying to stay status quo and build, and they don't have a bad record. They didn't do that badly. So I think they're looking at, not trading much at all and trying to build, and they may even add. So that's what I had in my notes is they, may not be huge sellers, but again, the next 4 weeks are going to be huge for that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I had in my notes.
I think the Marlins will kind of be like, we'll get to the Cleveland Guardians, not to spoil it. I know the Guardians are a better team, but I don't think they'll sell. One interesting note about Miami, out of all the teams that could sell, might be a seller, they have no contracts expiring in the offseason.
Yeah.
Everyone has a year and a half at least of team control. 2 options that I think could go if they decide to get a piece or two for the future. Garrett Cooper, is their DH.
Yeah.
Sometimes does first base, having a good year. And Cole Sulser used to be, I think it's Sulser or Slusher. I always mix it up.
Yep, with the Orioles.
Used to be an Oriole, having a decent year, could be a trade chip.
And he did decently last year with the Orioles too, by the way.
He had a really good year with the Orioles.
Yeah.
But they don't need to trade anybody.
Yeah.
The Phillies, if we did this podcast a month ago, I would say are going to be a seller. Who knows what's going to happen because of Harper.
I know.
But I think they'll buy.
I think they have the money to buy.
I think they have too much money. They're almost like a sunken cost thing. Well,
Yeah.
we can't trade all this. We got to go buy people. So I think that wraps up the National League, Dad. Do you have anything else before we go to AL?
Now look at my notes here. I think the rest of my notes are All American League. So yes, I'm ready to switch leagues.
Well, I think there'll be more. How many sellers did we just come across in the National
The
League?
checklist is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay. Well, I have 2, 4, 6. I have 7 possible sellers in the AL, so we're kind of balanced there. You might even disagree with 2 of them.
Okay.
Let's go, just like we did in the NL, Dad, the Central first.
Okay.
I see 2 teams. I don't see the White Sox, unless something really terrible happens in July. I really think they'll fight. Twins are first.
Well, you want to talk about La Russa? Because right now he's on the hot seat.
Oh, I think he should get fired. I shouldn't have they hired him. I just don't think they'll sell unless something bad happens in July and they start to trade their bullpen pieces.
Yeah, he's made some boo-boos.
He has.
Yeah.
I think the Guardians will not sell. We'll see if they're buyers or not.
Another surprise team.
Yeah.
Who thought they would do as
AL
well?
Central's weak, dog.
Yeah.
So the 2 easy ones here, I think, are the Royals and the Tigers.
Okay.
Which one do you want to talk about first?
I got the Royals, and I think, Benintendi apparently is one of those folks that people are really clamoring for.
Yes.
What a nice addition to any outfield. Very athletic. I've always liked the way he bats. He could be another spark plug. And the other one that people are banding around right now is Greinke. Just to add to a 4th or 5th starter with playoff experience and everything else. So those are the 2 that I've seen that seem to have some, traceability to them that teams are after those 2.
And they had Carlos Santana, and
Yeah.
I thought he'd go, and he did. We'll get to the Mariners in a second. Benintendi will go. He is their biggest trade chip. I think they'll keep Greinke. And the reason why is he's old. I don't think he'd get that much back. He's not having a great year. And it kind of makes sense to finish your career with the team you started with. But that's it. So if they get a good offer, take it.
Yeah. Because this has been a disappointing year for them because they thought they were going to contend.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
3 other people, we talked at the beginning of this podcast 35 minutes ago about Whit Merrifield.
Yes.
I think they keep him again. I don't think they trade him.
He hasn't traded him yet.
I know, so I just don't
and
see
God
it.
knows every offseason he's a topic as well. So, yeah, I'm thinking unless they get an offer they can't refuse, yeah, I think he stays in Kansas City. It's a fan favorite.
The other 2 recently acquired Amir Garrett. Having a terrible year, so reason to keep him there to rebuild his value. But that could be something. But Michael Taylor, 1.5-year team of Michael Taylor could go. Former Gold Glover Michael Taylor, same with Benintendi from last year. So I think if they want to move $4.5 million of Michael Taylor and $8.5 million of Andrew Benintendi, that's $13 million. That certainly helps their payroll. So those are the 2 names I have. I'm excited for their new first baseman that's replaced Carlos Santana. and I'm excited to see them build a team around Bobby Witt Jr.
Yeah, well, always one of my favorites, and I think they'll give him a year, and then again, make a couple trades and then get busy in the off season with some free agents. Yeah, they thought they were going to be really good this year, but they just never got on any kind of streak and just kind of floundered.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very excited. We'll get to a team that has none of these, but very excited for all of their future prospects. They have some strong first baseman prospect. We just saw one get caught up. Good old Vinny. They have a catcher in the offing that they can move Sally to DH.
He's hurt, though. Sally.
No, I know. So for next year, I'm looking at 2025.
Got it. Sorry about that.
But they have a catcher that's ready to take over behind the dish, and they have a really strong pitching core that I know not everyone's going to be the next Zach Greinke, but they have a bright future. Trade these guys to get some more help for the future because
they got a strong farm system. So
that's what I'm saying.
Help's on the way.
Yep. All right, let's talk about the Tigers. Tigers have. I thought we were going to be a possible playoff team. Hey, maybe they'll do some pushing, The White Sox will run away with it, and maybe they get second.
Yeah.
They have $137 million on the table, and they need to shed. They like Hinch. They extended him, but they've had no offense all year. Yeah. In my opinion, they'll get more value, therefore, for their pitching, so let's start there. They have one starter, Mr. Pine Tar, Michael Pineda. Decent year. Moved past the Pine Tar thing to prove he's actually a good pitcher. He could get traded. And 3 relievers. Up until a week ago, Willie Peralta had under a 1 ERA. Mm-hmm. He got hit a little bit. His ERA is more normal now. Michael Fulmer and Andrew Chafin, former Cup, all get rid of. They're all
Chafin will go quickly.
Yeah, Chafin has a year and a half of team control left because he was one of a pickup. But let's get him for 2 years. But they should all go. Offense is quotes here. Offense. Tucker Barnhart is having the worst year of his freaking career. Mm-hmm. No home runs. I think batting average is below 200, so that could be. I don't know. Someone could see an upside in him, but he's had a terrible year.
Backup catcher.
Yeah, or if catcher's injured. Robbie Grossman.
Yeah.
Both are in their contract years. Grossman's having an awful year as well. DH, platoon type of guy at this point. The big upside is now solidified second baseman Jonathan Scope. I think they keep him, but everyone else that I've mentioned, they trade.
I think they'll listen to any offer just because they're so disappointed, and then they'll go back this offseason and say, okay, how can we fix some stuff? Mm-hmm. You're right. I mean, Javi hitting 220. And
no one's hitting.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that, it's just been a bad season. And again, one of the teams that you thought were going to be 500 at least. But it just didn't happen.
My note for the Tigers, because I'd like to go see Comerica at some point, was it will click. So at some point, I think the Tigers dominate the Central.
Yeah, they did well in the offseason, on paper.
They had a terrible season.
Cambraro's gone after this year?
No, I think he has one more year after this year. And they're not going to trade him.
Yeah.
They can't. They shouldn't. Dad, let's just move to the East. One team, but not much to talk about. Baltimore Orioles, again, something that I don't like to celebrate because I like to see people get paid. $45 million payroll. Look at all these other payrolls I've talked about. Orioles are better than most of their records. Than the Cubs, than the Reds, than the Nationals.
Oh, yeah.
This team at $45 million is working. That I see 3 trade candidates, and one is on his contract year, but the other 2 have either an option or a year and a half of team control left. It's Trey Mancini, that's a big name.
I know.
Jordan Lyles, not a big name, fourth, fifth starter, and I'm kind of liking his personality now. But Rougned Odor, as a middle infielder, DH kind of guy. Did you have a 4th?
I do. Anthony Santander is my guy that I think will get traded,
even though he's got a couple years left.
Yes.
Okay.
They got a couple outfielders in the minor leagues that are knocking on the door, and I think the Stowers is one. So I think Santander will kind of get traded. Great addition to a team, switch hitting, good defensive outfielder, but they got people in the minors that take that right field slot. I think they trade Trey and Anthony this offseason and then go from there. But Trey's on record now of saying the worst thing that Baltimore did was push that wall back because his stats are just really down. And he said...
It's what we said on this podcast. It's going to affect Trey Mancini.
Correct. And he's got 4 home runs and, not great RBIs. And he said, I've hit the ball on the nose, and it's a routine fly to left field. And I think he'll welcome the trade. So...
I'm very excited for these 3 predictions. I'm really happy with when we get to that podcast. Tune in. I really like what I do with these 3 players. Dad, let's move to Oakland.
Oh, yeah, I got
$2 more million than the Baltimore Orioles at 47. Big barn burner spenders on our hands. Walk me through, Dad. Walk me through some Oakland athletics.
Frankie's going to bring a ton. I think Frankie goes the last day of the trade deadline.
Fair. Very fair.
And they're just waiting for the bidders to come in. Excuse me. And I think he's going to be the one that brings in the most haul for anybody that's out there. Sean Murphy apparently is right up there with Wilson Contreras as far as a valuable catcher. And Ramon, the really good outfitter.
Laureano.
I think he's going to be out there as well. Defensively, what a great 4th outfielder. So I think between those 3, I think they all get traded.
I don't have Ramon being traded, but I see the angle. Do you need some more?
Sure.
I do have a note that they could cut literally half of their entire $47 million payroll just with this trade deadline, which is incredible. It could be at like $25 million by August 3rd. I'm not kidding. I did the math.
That's one player.
Yeah. We mentioned some big names. Sean Murphy, by the way, has 3.5 years of team control left, so that's a starter, in my opinion, not a backup.
Right, but I'm just saying there's a couple teams that desperately need a catcher. Wherever Wilson goes, Murphy will be involved with the next.
Right, we'll see who needs a starter by August.
Yeah.
Journeyman Jed Lowry, 38-year-old, maybe. Chad Pinder, kind of in the same thing, 4th outfielder. Stephen Voigt, Stephen Piscotty, Elvis Andrus is an interesting case here. If a shortstop gets hurt, they would probably trade him because he's got a lot of money. So maybe Oakland has to eat some of that or package him with some of these other players. But star power, it's Frankie Montes, a huge drop to Sean Murphy. In my opinion, another huge drop to Ramon Laureano. And then
Chad.
4th and 5th players.
Yeah, I think Chad gets traded as well just because apparently...
Pinder?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think he is a reliable reliever, and I think a lot of relievers are going to change teams.
Yeah, that's the hardest thing to predict is just when we do predictions, this person needs a shortstop. 5 teams are going to be in on this player.
Yeah.
Who doesn't need an extra bullpen arm or a 4th outfielder?
Especially with the starters only going 5 innings.
Dad, let's talk about Texas. We're going to move to the AL West. Unless you had any other
no, I'm
teams
good.
Stay in the AL West. I'm so sorry.
Take it away.
My note for the Texas Rangers is I don't think they'll sell much of their future, like the Simeons and the Seagers. Obviously, they're not.
They're doing better than a lot of people thought.
Right. I'm just saying they should sell a few of their contract guys, because they're not going to catch the Astros. There's not going to be a second wildcard team that comes out of the West. I don't see it. I don't buy it. That gives a little bit of a prediction for the rest of what I'm about to say. Texas Rangers, are they on your list?
They're not, but go ahead.
You really think that? Okay, wow.
Well, I did my definite sellers and all that stuff. This is one of the teams I had up in the air.
Interesting. I had guaranteed. I actually think that if the Texas Rangers at August 1st are above 500, they should sell. I think every team in this division outside the Houston Astros should sell. They're not catching the Astros, and you're not catching a wild card.
Okay.
Seattle should give up. LA should give up. I'm on record. Martin Perez was a Cy Young candidate. He certainly dropped off a little bit, but he would draw a significant package for only a 2-month rental. Matt Moore is an average bullpen arm, but could go long relief because he's a former starter. Cole Calhoun, 4th outfielder, DH.
He's requested a trade.
Garrett Richards has a team option, so it's not truly in that, much guaranteed to be gone, but probably. But I would trade Martin Perez as a former Red Sox player. Martin's never had this good of a year. His value's never been as high. I would trade him and get what you can for him and really build your Josh Jung at third base. Build this team that you want to build.
Yeah.
They've showed that they're willing to get rid of a few people with Willie Calhoun and bring in Steven Dugar, not sure. I just think they should sell those people. They're at $140 million. They're not drawing in $140 million in revenue. Trading these 4 players is $16.5 million plus what they could come back with.
Yeah.
So to me, that makes
building
some
for
sense.
the future.
Texas should be competitive next year. This was a great jump if you're a Rangers fan from, I think they were bottom of the barrel last year, to a huge stride in improvement, something to look forward to, promise in your starting pitching, good stuff in the bullpen. It's just not going to be enough. You still have to play Houston. You're not going to catch them. So Texas Rangers.
And Houston's going to add.
Houston will be in the ALCS this year.
No, add players.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, Houston is, they're not, let's get to the playoffs. Like Phillies, and honestly probably a little bit of the Red Sox have this, let's make sure we get to the playoff mentality. The Astros are, how do we win the World Series? The Dodgers, how do we win the World Series?
True.
The Mets.
They want to be the last team standing.
Right. So that mentality, the Dodgers, that's just a different mentality than the Phillies or the Red Sox.
Yeah.
Anything to add to the Rangers?
No, I just, it's another one of those surprise teams that they're doing better than expected. So
Yeah, you don't even have them selling.
I had them on the fence. So when I did, sellers and buyers, I had a lot of people that were on the fence in the last 3 weeks. Those are my keys. And then the other ones are like, all depends on the next couple of weeks.
So these are the locks?
Yes.
Okay, I gotcha. That's very true. Okay, well, so let's keep talking, then I guess I'll stay here. Because both of these next 2 teams, the Mariners and the Angels, I already have said should sell. Selling amidst defeat to both of these teams.
Seattle's had a bad year.
Seattle's had a horrible year. The Angels, by the way, if they sell, I can't say for certain here, but I would bet a lot of money that they would be the highest payroll team as a seller at the deadline.
Yeah.
$192 million.
And, I wonder if it's team chemistry. What's with them that they can't get over the hump and they have a good bit of talent, probably the best player in baseball.
2 best players in baseball.
Yeah, and they just can't get going. They hire, personalities of the manager and Joe Madden and everything. What's keeping them from joining the elite? I haven't figured that out.
So when Philly fired Girardi and Thompson came in, they went on a winning streak.
Correct.
And they won. And that was enough evidence for everyone in baseball to say
Spark.
He was the problem. They're a good team. And now Harper's injured, and that's not anyone's fault. Angels, let's do the same thing. Let's fire Joe Madden, Mr. Mohawk, and then bring in Phil Nevin, who I do not like. And it has not worked. They've gotten worse, in my opinion.
I don't think they have any respect for him.
No, after the fight, absolutely not.
Yeah.
So it's funny that we're talking about the Mariners and the Angels as 2 teams that probably will fight again this year because both of their seasons, I think, are over. I'm declaring both of them dead in the water. Who do you want me to go in on first?
Do Seattle, because the Angels are going to be, again, I have them on the fence, but there's some players, their names have been bandied about that I'm shocked that they're banning about some names, including some of their pitching.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
So when the first trade of the season, or the first big trade of the summer, happened with Carlos Santana from Kansas City, I texted my dad immediately, hey, Seattle's going to flip him at the deadline. They have an injured Ty France at first base. They need somebody physically, a physical body there that's going to be okay that they could trade again in 5-6 weeks. And that's going to be Carlos Santana. He will get flipped again by the deadline. He was, keep this in mind, he was a Mariner for like 2 weeks in the offseason a couple years ago, and they got traded before he ever put on a Mariners jersey.
Will travel.
I had Sergio Romo getting traded. He got cut. Gone.
Yeah.
Adam Frazier. Constantly getting traded. Adam Frazier, your second baseman, you're an outfielder. He gets traded.
Yeah.
And then Mitch Haniger, power hitting, right fielder / DH, if he stays healthy, will draw. He's currently injured. But if he can get healthy, get back on the roster, should draw some trade interest.
As all the stuff that I did for research, they said Haniger is the one that has the most value and probably will be the one that gets moved above all the others. But again, I think Seattle's going to have new management next year.
Scott Services.
They had high hopes in Seattle after last year, just missing the playoffs.
If expanded playoffs were here last year, they could have made a run.
So it's been disappointing in Seattle, but I can see them making whatever trades they make just to reduce payroll and get some prospects. But yeah.
You talk about pitching, Diego Castillo and Paul. It's either Sewald or Seawald. I'm not positive.
Sewald.
Again, listen to offers on them. You never know what you might get or package with some of the above people.
So right now we got like 40 pitchers being moved.
Exactly. That's why I said That's why I'm saying like some of the starters of the Diamondbacks and the Reds aren't going to get moved because there's a lot of people on the market.
Yeah.
Wait till you get to the Angels. My note for the Mariners should be a very active offseason for you. Honestly, regardless of what you do here, if you trade or stand pat or do buy, you're not good enough still to catch the Astros of 2023, and you're really you have Julio Rodriguez. You're not going to suddenly again give up and just stay at the bottom. Like you have such a gap, in your playoffs. There's got to be some push there. Angels.
Syndergaard
gone.
Okay, that was my big headline because the research I did was like, okay, they're not going anywhere with all these superstars, so where do you start? And then he may bring the most in return.
Agree. So when the Angels and their Mariners were, having a little knockout Kings battle, a lot of people thought that, hey, one of these teams is going to get motivated from this fight. It'll kick them in the ass, and they'll do better. And one is just that's their season, and that's their season to tank.
Did you see Archie Bradley?
Just can't even jump the freaking thing. It's
broke his elbow.
2 feet, man, and he just fell over the. Anyways, fell over the railing.
And it was his pitching arm.
Yeah, he was on my trade candidate.
Is that ironic?
Of course it is. Archie, he's just a weird dude. I think if there was a team that could get better, it's the Seattle Mariners. Even though the Angels have more talent, more money, more ability to improve.
You're right.
The Angels, if you look at the top 100 prospects in baseball right now, there's 2 teams that don't have any on them, and one are the Angels. That is a huge incentive to trade. Noah Syndergaard, I know he's still having a great season. He's not maybe the Thor of his 25-year-old year with the Mets, but he can bring 2 MLB-ready talents that are in your top 10, if not top 5.
Oh, yeah. A team that needs a starting pitcher, what an acquisition.
He is the best starting pitcher, I think, that is available. Martin Perez is a 2, Chad Kuhl's a 3. Michael Lorenzen, again, reliever, starter, swingman, starting a lot this year. We'll bring that tier down from Syndergaard. Tepera, Mr. Also, let's fight some people. I think could get traded. Matt Duffy could get traded. Kurt Suzuki, everyone needs a backup catcher. And I think they're just going to move on from this guy, Joe Adele, and just package him with someone and say, hey, do you have a 23-year-old, 24-year-old outfielder?
Change of scenery. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was like the top 10 player for the longest time. I thought he was going to be a superstar.
Yeah.
But then, you still have a core of people that make a lot of money. You kind of go, okay, where do you just implode the team, or do you kind of go piecemeal and hope that you can repair what's wrong? They're a very interesting team.
I have 17 possible starting pitching trade candidates from the names I just mentioned.
Yeah, well, one of the ones you left off that I think will be
Frankie Montes, another high-end person. I forgot him. Sorry.
Is that what I was going to say?
Yeah. Well, that's what I had him in the Oakland. I just forgot to list him.
I think he brings 4 players.
If he gets traded, yeah, I do.
I think he will get traded.
I think he will, too. I think it's dumb to not trade him.
Yeah, there's enough people out there with money and all that stuff that will love that for the addition. And, let's face it, there's teams that are saying, hey, if we're a player away, let's mortgage the future and let's go for it right now.
I have 17 relievers as well that could get traded. That makes more sense than starters.
Yes.
But it's going to be an active trade deadline. He thinks big names. I think a lot of little names.
There'll be more trades this year than last year.
Well, last year was crazy.
I know that. Cubs have made 8 trades in 24 hours, whatever it was. So
I couldn't keep up.
yeah.
Enjoy the trade
It was
deadline.
a great day, though.
Take the day off. If you're retired, you don't have to worry about calling out.
That's right. Make yourself a big breakfast.
But yeah, Dad, this was funny. Dad, this was an hour long, much longer than I thought we'd be.
Yeah.
So we're going to pause here, and then in the coming weeks, probably mid-July, we'll upload our trade predictions. If not anyone, I'm sure someone in that gap has been traded.
Yeah.
But Dad, that is when we will upload our next podcast.
Terrific. Thank you for listening.
If you listen to the whole hour, comment your favorite color below, and we know you listened to the whole hour, and then I will totally interact with you. But give us a like on the video, share with your friends, follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, at Pastime Podcast, and we're the Father and Son Pastime Podcast on Facebook.
That's right. Enjoy the 4th of July holiday.